Klein passed away recently, and in this video I want to talk about his passing and why I look up to his work as a photographer and overall as a creative. Hey, my name is Matt, and on this channel we talk about street photography and pretty much everything that comes with that. So I found out about William Klein actually through Dido Moriyama, who's one of my other favorite photographers. Recently, I've been doing this thing of really just trying to get more into the history of photography and trace back the lineage of people that I like and figuring out who they looked up to and seeing how these influences shake out generation from generation. So Dido Moriyama cited that William Klein was one of his biggest inspirations in the US. I think Dido went to a MoMA exhibit and saw his work or something and kind of brought that energy, everything he saw, back to his home country, Japan. So I decided to look at William Klein, and having recently moved to New York, there were a lot of galleries showing his work. One was at Howard Greenberg in New York, and one was at the International Center of Photography, aka ICP, and I checked out both. And right now, this is the photographer that I'm learning and trying to understand and break down his work. William Klein is known for his blur, his high contrast imagery, and his graininess. All the same things that people say about Dido Moriyama, stylistically at least. The story of how William Klein got into photography is actually kind of interesting. After World War II, he wanted to get into art. The gist is that he got into painting, and his teacher recommended him and his students to not get into the gallery life and to actually explore new media like photography and books. William Klein's abstract painting was noticed by this guy who asked him to do architecture. Not architecture, but the guy asked him to do his abstract style onto room dividers. When he made these room dividers, he was going to photograph them. He asked his wife to spin them. What he noticed was that in the photographs afterwards, that because these room dividers were spinning while he was shooting the photos, there was a lot of blur and movement. And that's what really got him interested into photography as a medium. And there are three things that I really love about him and his work. And the first is that he did everything. Like, he didn't limit himself to a lane. He shot black and white. He shot color. He did grainy, high contrast, blurry images, but he also just shot really sharp, regular images too. He shot portraits, he shot street, he shot fashion, he shot what seemed to be documentary, but he also shot really surreal images too. He did everything. He didn't limit himself to any specific category within photography. He also had this approach to his photography that was the complete opposite of other masters at his time, like Cartier-Bresson. And to quote him directly, he said, "I was very consciously trying to do the opposite of what Cartier-Bresson was doing. He did pictures without intervening. He was like the invisible camera. I wanted to be visible in the biggest way possible." Looking at the history of photography, at least to where I'm at right now, because the history is really big, in street photography, there's this idea of, yes, being invisible and stepping back. And to have such a highly regarded photographer approach it the opposite really just proves that there are no rules, because we both consider the works of people who followed both principles to be amazing and great. So in this sense, William Klein is just showing me a different way about thinking things, which I really appreciate. Along with his work in every genre of photography, what I love about him is also his willingness to experiment, as shown in the first reason, but also in the fact that he used 28mm wide lenses all the way to like 100+ millimeter, I think 105. The fact that he used wide and telephoto lenses, he had a willingness to experiment. Even in his first book, New York, Life is Good, he did all the book layout, he did the graphic design. He had like the same energy to me of Tyler the Creator, who's like a modern day creative, and he had a hand in every part of what he wanted to make. So seeing that experimentation, it pushes the boundaries of what your lane should or can be. Finally, if I had to wrap it all up into one little package, what I love about William Klein is his ethos and his values. To give another quote, he said, "I came from the outside. The rules of photography didn't interest me. There were things that you couldn't do with any other medium. Grain, contrast, blur, cockeyed framing, eliminating or exaggerating gray tones, and so on. I thought it would be good to show what's possible, to say that this is as valid of a way of using the camera as conventional approaches." And he also said, "Be yourself.
I much prefer seeing something, even if it is clumsy, that doesn't look like somebody else's work.
For me, I can see these values clearly in all his photographs. This idea about amateurism or okay with being a beginner, his unconventionality, also his work ethic in terms of making how many books he did and also the amount of films. It was cool at ICP, they had a portion of the show dedicated to his video and film work. And he gave up photography at some point, not gave up, but he just got really busy with directing commercials and ads and making films for like a decade, 2 decades plus before coming back and doing still photography. He did a lot of work. It was like 90 plus pieces of filmmaking, which is insane. He wasn't afraid to take risks, like whether that was jumping into other genres or using different pieces of gear that he wasn't familiar with to create images that he didn't make before. And he even jumped into like filmmaking, and then he did graphic design. Like he did everything and wasn't scared to do it. And that's what I really love about his ethos and his creative values. So it's really sad to hear this news that William Klein passed away recently. And honestly, all the masters of photography, all the masters of street photography, they're either gone already or they're old as fuck, and they the clock is ticking. We should really appreciate the time we have with the ones that are still alive, and to pick their brain and to hopefully create more content from them, and to share, not to spread, but to really just share their thoughts and how they approach their creative life, photography, etc. Because that's just, to me, I really love that stuff, and it's just as valuable as the work and the photos that result from that. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend checking out my reaction and breakdown of this book that I mentioned, William Klein's first book, New York. Full name, Life is Good and Good for You in New York, Trans Witness Rebels. Check it out right here.